Emma's heart pounded with a mix of excitement and exhaustion. She had finally moved into her new apartment. The place was a bit of a fixer-upper, but the rent was perfect, and the location was ideal. The air hung heavy with the scent of dust and old wood. It whispered stories of the past, stories Emma couldn't quite decipher. As she navigated through the dimly lit hallway, her eyes fell upon an ornately framed mirror leaning against the wall. It was tall and slender, its wooden frame intricately carved with strange, almost unsettling figures. The mirror's surface was cloudy, marred by time and neglect. Yet something about it drew Emma in, a strange magnetism she couldn't explain. She reached out, her fingers tracing the cold, smooth surface of the glass. A shiver ran down her spine. Emma shook her head, dismissing the unsettling feeling. It was just an old mirror in an old apartment, nothing to be spooked about. She had boxes to unpack and a new home to settle into. The mirror could wait. Little did she know it had been waiting for her. Days turned into nights as Emma settled into her new home. The apartment, once filled with the silence of vacancy, now echoed with the sounds of her life. Music, laughter, and the gentle hum of everyday existence. Yet, the old mirror in the hallway remained. It stood there, a silent sentinel, its presence both intriguing and unsettling. Emma would often find herself drawn to it, her reflection distorted and unclear in its clouded depths. She noticed something peculiar about the reflections. They weren't quite right, as if the mirror had a life of its own, twisting and contorting her image. At times, she could have sworn she saw a flicker of movement in the reflection, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Emma brushed off these strange occurrences as tricks of the light or her own tired mind playing games, but deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. The mirror, once an object of curiosity, was slowly transforming into a source of growing apprehension. One evening, as Emma was returning home from a long day, she walked past the mirror and paused. A cold shiver ran down her spine, and she felt a pair of eyes watching her. She turned slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. The mirror, once merely unsettling, now radiated a palpable aura of dread. As she peered into its clouded depths, she noticed it, a figure standing behind her in the reflection. It was tall and slender, shrouded in darkness, its features indiscernible. Fear gripped Emma's throat, choking her breath. She whirled around, but the hallway was empty. Emma stumbled back, her mind racing. Had she really seen something, or was her imagination getting the better of her? A cold sweat broke out on her skin. The hallway seemed to close in on her, the air thick with an unseen menace. The figure in the mirror became a recurring nightmare. Every time Emma passed by the mirror, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The once familiar hallway now felt like a menacing labyrinth. Sleep offered little respite. Her dreams were haunted by the shadowy figure, its presence suffocating, its intentions unknown. Emma tried to rationalize her fear. She told herself it was just an old mirror, a relic of the past with no power over her. But the fear lingered, a constant companion that gnawed at the edges of her sanity. She began to avoid the mirror, taking detours through her apartment to bypass the hallway, but it wasn't enough. The mirror's presence permeated the apartment, its silent menace seeping into every corner of her life. Emma felt trapped, her sanctuary violated by an unseen entity. Section 5. Confrontation and Shattered Reflections. Emma couldn't live like this anymore. The fear, the constant dread had become unbearable. She knew she had to do something to confront the terror that held her captive. One night, armed with nothing but a hammer and her own raw courage, Emma decided to rid herself of the mirror once and for all. She stood before it, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The hallway was silent, the air thick with anticipation. As she raised the hammer, she could have sworn she saw the figure in the mirror move, its shadowy hand reaching out towards her. With a scream of defiance, Emma swung the hammer. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the apartment. Shards of the mirror rained down around her, reflecting her terror in 1,000 broken pieces. Emma stood there panting, her chest heaving as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The mirror lay in pieces at her feet, its reign of terror finally over. Section 6. A moment of relief, a lifetime of fear. A wave of relief washed over Emma. The oppressive weight that had been crushing her spirit lifted. She had faced her fear and emerged victorious. At least, that's what she told herself. As she cleaned up the shattered remains of the mirror, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The fear was gone, but in its place lingered a profound sense of unease. It was as if the mirror, in its destruction, had unleashed something into her world, something unseen, unknown. The apartment, once her sanctuary, now felt different. The air was heavy with an unseen presence, a silent observer lurking just beyond the veil of her perception. Emma tried to ignore it, to convince herself it was just her imagination running wild. But deep down she knew better. The man in the mirror was gone, but his haunting gaze lingered. Section 7. The lingering gaze. A haunting reminder. Life went on, but Emma couldn't escape the feeling that she was being watched. Everywhere she went, she felt unseen eyes following her every move, a constant reminder of the terror she had faced. The shadows in her apartment seemed to deepen, whispering secrets she couldn't comprehend. The once familiar sounds of her home now held an unsettling edge, as if something else lurked beneath the surface of the mundane. Emma's friends noticed the change in her. She was withdrawn, her once bright eyes now clouded with a perpetual fear. They chalked it up to stress or the after-effects of a traumatic experience. But Emma knew better. The mirror might be gone, but the man in the mirror, the entity it had revealed to her, was still out there, lurking somewhere just beyond her sight, watching, waiting. Section 8. Emma's new reality, living with the unseen. Emma became a prisoner in her own home. She avoided mirrors, terrified of what she might see reflected back at her. She jumped at shadows, her heart pounding at the slightest noise. Her once vibrant life had shrunk to the confines of her apartment, her world reduced to a constant state of hypervigilance. She tried everything to escape the unseen terror that haunted her waking hours and plagued her dreams. She meditated, practiced mindfulness, even consulted with a therapist, but nothing worked. The feeling of being watched persisted, a constant reminder of her encounter with the supernatural. Emma was trapped, living in a perpetual state of fear, her life forever altered by the haunting presence of the man in the mirror. Section 9. Seeking answers, finding fear. Desperate for answers, Emma delved into the history of her apartment building. She scoured old newspapers, interviewed long-time residents, and even consulted with a local historian. Her search led her down a rabbit hole of strange and unsettling tales. She discovered that her apartment building had a dark past. It had once been a boarding house, plagued by a series of unexplained deaths and disappearances. Rumors of hauntings and malevolent spirits had circulated for years, but nothing concrete was ever proven. Emma realized that she wasn't alone in her experiences. The man in the mirror, the haunting presence that tormented her, was part of something ancient and evil, something that had been lurking in the shadows of her apartment building for decades. Section 10. The man in the mirror, a reflection of our fears. Emma never saw the man in the mirror again, but she never truly escaped his haunting presence either. She continued to live with the fear, the constant awareness that something unseen was watching her every move. The experience had changed her, irrevocably. She had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back. Emma's story is a chilling reminder that some things are best left undisturbed, that some doors should never be opened. The man in the mirror may be gone, but the fear he represents, the fear of the unknown, the fear that lurks within us all, will always remain. For the true horror lies not in the reflection, but in what it reflects back at us, our own deepest fears.